Thank you, Chris. Now, today's been quite a challenging day to be a businessman, sitting here hearing about all the problems the planet has got and how much we contribute to it. I just want to share 15 minutes of observations with you about actually how beneath the surface, there's actually some very positive things happening. I won't quite say tectonic, because we haven't got that scale yet, but for the first time, I believe there's a roadmap out there for a typical business to become dramatically more sustainable than it is today, something we've never had before. Now, the challenge is all about scale. There's no point a few hundred businesses finding sustainability, many millions not. How do we get millions engaged? Well, let's ask for ourselves three questions. I hear three attitudes from business leaders at the moment about sustainability. The first attitude says, what's the point? There's no pressure from government, there's no pressure from consumers, there can't be a problem after all, can they? The second attitude says, well, I accept there is a problem, but we're in the middle of a recession. Can't we just wait 5 years till that's passed and then I'll help solve it? And then the third attitude says, there is a problem, let's get on with solving it now, but what the hell do we do? Where do we start? What's this weird thing called sustainability? I have none of the skills or the process in my business to become sustainable. And I want to nail each of those three myths through the next few minutes. Now, let's start with a playback of what we've heard today in business language. We sell stuff, a lot of stuff, 2.7 billion individual items sold by the 40th biggest retailer in the world. That's an awful lot of stuff. But stuff has made people's lives better. The television, the computer, the mobile phone, planes, cars, better clothing, better food have all improved people's lives. They're not going to go away. And as a growing middle class develops in the developing world, they'll absolutely want the things that we've taken for granted. Why not? Absolutely should have them. But all that stuff comes at a price. I'm not going to go and labour the points again. It's been eloquently made already. But all this stuff, the 100 billion items of clothing sold around the world each year, the 1 trillion items of food consumed every year, the 5 billion mobile phones that we have on the planet today that are replaced every 18 months to 2 years, have a huge impact. The forests, the soil, the water, the waste. We can't colonize as we are, and yet somehow we must accommodate these billions of new consumers who want all that we've got. Is that 200 billion items of clothing sold each year? Is it 2 trillion items of food? What do we do to our planet if we take so much out of it? So there's a huge environmental challenge. But I want to be very clear about why business is beginning to wake up to this. And that's through the thing that business understands, cost. At this moment in time, in the economic model that we have, everything should be at really low prices. Energy, soy, cotton, all the commodities I bring into my business model to make products should be at record lows. We're in the middle of the worst recession for 30 or 40, 50 years, surely. And yet all those prices, even if they're not at the highest level they've been in the last 2 or 3 years, are high, they're volatile, and they're going to remain there. So if there's one thing that's concentrating a number of business leaders at the moment, it's what's happening to their cost base as the environmental pressures bear down on what little this planet has got left to give, and then all the BRIC countries, the Brazils, the Russias, the Indians, the Chinas, their consumers start to suck in everything we've taken for granted. So suddenly we've got an enormous cost challenge as well as the environmental challenge that we recognize. The second challenge we've got is a social challenge, and that's the basic compact between society, citizens, consumers, and business. I think business has got off relatively lightly in the last 3 years compared to what might have happened in terms of anger about how the system has let people down. But that's not to say that latent distrust and anger about business is not there. Absolutely it is. We live in febrile times. It's a brave business leader at the moment that assumes all will be fine for the next 3 or 4 years. If a national government can be brought down in 3 weeks by citizens and social media, think what can happen to a business that gets it wrong. So there's an environmental challenge, there's a cost challenge, and there's a challenge with the basic trust dimension between business, consumers, and society. So what do we do about it? Well, we're stood at a crossroads, and I think a number of chief execs of big business have recognized this. Turn left, and there's a very positive world ahead of us. Several billion consumers start to come into the marketplace that we can sell to. More money, more revenue. Who wouldn't want that? There lies good things. Equally, in terms of social good, many people in the developing world get access to things that we take for granted to make our lives better. That's a very nice route. But the other route is not just a little bit worse, it's dramatically worse. And that means that we don't have the resource, the capacity to feed the needs of these billions of extra consumers. And not only that, we actually shoot the goose that laid the golden egg, the billion or so consumers that we live off today, because there simply isn't any wood, any fish, any water around to service our needs as well as your growing needs. So actually, business leaders have begun to recognize we stand at a very important crossroads. All well and good, and a few minutes to reflect back what I've heard today, but perhaps in a little bit more of a business language. Let's turn to the solution. All these business leaders saying, okay, Mike, you're not buying into this, we can't carry on as we are. What do we do? It's very simple. We do 5 things. We plan, we integrate, we develop partnerships, we communicate differently with our consumer, and we innovate. Not radically different words from anything that business does today. They're 5 words that are bandied around for the last few decades and will be into the future, just running your business. They're not scary. So what does that mean in practice? Why do you need to plan? Well, let me just show you one slide, and it's the only busy slide that I'll use for you. Up the vertical axis is just how sustainable we believe business is, 0% to 100%. There's no science behind it, it's just perception. Along the bottom is time. And all we're saying is, back in the 1980s, business used to do something called philanthropy by and large. You used to toss a bit of money at a charity at the end of the year. One person in the business was responsible for it. The other 99,999 just got on with making money. Then it became a little bit more sophisticated. People recognized the need to get out in the community a little bit more, do a bit of volunteering, a bit of support for the high streets where the shops might be. Not bad stuff, but still only involving a few hundred people from the business. We then moved into a new area, CSR, corporate social responsibility. It's about risk management, stopping bad things from happening. And we started to deal with the big issues we're dealing with today. Deforestation, it might be in your products. Too much fish from the sea, there might be a campaign. There might be pesticides in your food. What about that genetic modification issue? Labour standards in factories. But it's very reactive. It was single issues. It's a few hundred good policemen or women around the business stopping bad things from happening. And then we moved into the world we're debating today, this need to build a more sustainable economy. We started the journey back in 2007 with something called Plan A because there is no Plan B for the one planet we've got. But we're not the only business that's doing this. There's a few names I've put here, Unilever's, Coca-Cola's, the Nikes, the Walmarts, the Mars's, the Johnson & Johnson's, the IBM's. Good businesses have moved into this new space of tackling sustainability. And why do you need a plan to do this rather than that? Because suddenly we're dealing with all the issues. In our case, 180 different social and environmental challenges. We're dealing with it across a whole value chain. 3,000 factories, 20,000 farmers, 1.7 million workers in the supply chain, thousands of raw material sources, 21 million people buying 2.7 billion individual items from us every year. Every single bit of that needs to become more sustainable in the next decade. You can only do it with a plan. You can't just magic it up overnight. So these big businesses like us are firmly in there now. 10% up the mountain called sustainability. 10%, that's all. So even the leaders have barely scratched the surface of what they need to do. I'm going to go and talk about the integration challenge, and then I'm going to talk about the innovation challenge of creating a truly sustainable business. But on this board lies the next driver for business. There's a cost challenge, there's a worry about the social dimension, the connection with society. Then look at these names. Big, ugly businesses that want to make a lot of dollar and a lot of profit. Every industrial sector in the world now has a mover that's shifting the marketplace. And I don't care whether you're a business leader that really gets this passionately, but you're looking at your competitors thinking, why is Walmart over there now? Why is Nike over there? I don't really get it, but I need to follow it. So the third dimension of true business driver for sustainability is competitive forces. Do not get left behind in your marketplace. So that's the plan side. You need a plan to deal with this. Good people are starting to do with it. It's a few hundred companies, not millions, but 2 or 3 months now, you can copy basically what these guys have done, interpret it for your own business model, and get on with it. The second challenge, integration. How do you start to get, in our case, 78,000 employees to do sustainability, and not just a few hundred? You need the leadership from the top. You've got people like Mark Parker at Nike, Paul Polman at Unilever, Mark Bollinger runs M&S, absolutely in the middle of a recession saying this is the heart of our future business success. Not philanthropic, the heart of future business success. The second thing you need is a mentor. We've had huge support from a guy called Jonathan Porritt, who's been inspirational in working one-on-one with our board to help them change and understand this dimension. It's not about big conferences and big books and big reports, one-on-one dimension. The third thing you need to drive ownership. Everybody in the business has to have an objective to deliver sustainability. DSM, the Dutch company, the food ingredient company, 50% of the board's bonus target is now based on sustainability delivery. That's the kind of thing that you need. You need management information. No business runs itself without day-to-day, hour-by-hour, minute-by-minute, granular financial information about its performance. And yet sustainability, we produce an annual report that looks backwards. That's no way to run a business into the future. Everybody needs to be building that day-to-day, real-time information about its sustainability performance so it can take decisions here and now about how it's performing. Next stage, project management. Most traditional CSR or sustainability teams sit in the middle of the business and wait for information to come to them. Can't happen now. You need to be actively pursuing change. Project management, driving thousands of factories, thousands of buying decisions to be done differently. And the final point on integration, business case. We count every pound that we spend on sustainability, and we count every pound that we make out of it. Last year, we made a net $100 million net benefit to the business at quite challenging times. Every business should be measuring what it spends and what it makes. It's a basic business discipline. Third thing, partnership. I showed a very steep ascent ahead of us in terms of climbing the sustainability mountain. I ain't going to do it on my own. Don't care how big I am or how much bigger something like Walmart is. None of us are going to do it alone. We need to work in partnership. And there are any number of partnerships now forming very rapidly. The World Economic Forum has started to find a platform for chief execs to explore this together. The Sustainability Consortium is starting to come together to create scientific solutions so businesses are doing one carbon footprint, one approach to water footprint, one approach to waste management, rather than us all doing different things in different ways, spreading confusion wherever we go in inefficiency. We need new approaches to creating business leaders of the future. People like INSEAD, IMD, Cranfield, the Cambridge Programme for Sustainable Leadership, WWF working with Exeter University are starting to create the platforms for people to learn a different way of doing business. That's more ambiguous, it's less certain about the future, but we need leaders who can cope with that for the future. We need different ways of connecting with governments. Say, having said that government's not a huge driver, government needs to be so much better than it is now at driving this sustainability revolution. There's so much government can do to make it easier for us to get on with it. And again, Davos, the World Economic Forum, is offering platforms such as that. New approaches to funding. We've heard about GIS in Germany. There's IDH in Germany. It's entrepreneurial. They're looking at spending money to use business to drive sustainability in ways that would traditionally have just lobbed money into a traditional aid model. Very entrepreneurial. So the partnership models exist out there. There are many, but no business has got an excuse not to get involved with them. The fourth area, the consumer. Again, the consumer is not a huge driver for change today, but eventually will be. There is a little secret in that word, consumption, that tells us where the ultimate answer lies. But we have to take consumers on a journey. 10% of consumers around the world passionately green. They're self-motivated, self-driven, they'll get off the backsides, they'll do it. But 65% are worried about the future, even in recession, worried about the planet, but they don't know where to start. They want to do 2 or 3 things. Recycle the clothing, recycle the packaging, don't waste the food, things that they can actually influence and do. But don't ask them to get involved with complex discussions about climate change or factories in China. That's what they want me to do. 95% is about business and government leading and driving, consumers doing their bit and following. But then we get to the next stage in the journey. We take those 5 things from being 10 things, and then 15 things with consumers as their confidence builds. We reward them with change. We start to bring them together in tribes. Business is a very good convener of bringing millions of people together around a brand. Well, let's convene them together, and millions of our consumers can come together and say, I did one small thing this week, but across 21 million people, that's a big change. So business becomes the convener, using its brand to bring people together to drive substantial change. And then how do you get information about products? I mean, we only sell 35,000 different product lines. That's small in the world of retail. Other people carry 500,000 different lines. How can I possibly give sustainability information on every product to every consumer? It's not about labeling every product, but the smartphone is bringing disruptive technology. People are starting to understand ways of providing layered information about the performance of products and helping people make decisions. It's not going to happen overnight, but over the next decade, there'll be a radical change in how people can access information to help their purchasing decisions, but just not yet. And the final thing, innovation. We've talked about planning, we've talked about integration, we've talked about partnerships, we've talked about the consumer. I want to see millions of companies doing that, not a few thousand that we have today. But I can see a way of getting there. So that's going to help us all get 2% better, 2% less energy, 2% better in terms of social performance every year. Is that enough to deal with the planetary crisis that we've got? No, it's not. We need a step change. We need true innovation to come up with radical new business models. Not tomorrow, but by 2020, we need the ground rules of a very different economic system being put into place. Now, we could spend another 18 minutes talking about innovation. We haven't got time today, but some of the key areas that we can start to explore. We can start to explore shifting from selling products to services. It's a well-discussed theoretical model, but very few people have actually done it in practice. Vodafone have got some great stories from M-Pesa in Kenya. Vodafone and Novartis in India. What with Interface have done, Kingfisher starting to explore in the UK in terms of renting power tools that you only use once a year, so why own them? But that started to happen. The second area is closed loop. Look what a business like Lenzing, a fibre manufacturer in Austria, has done. It's a huge chemical plant, 4,000 people work in the middle of the Austrian Alps. They didn't know what to do with all the waste. But then they allowed dozens of small entrepreneurs to come round them and start to take what was a waste to them to be a free raw material for this entrepreneur. And suddenly, every waste has got a secondary use. It's a model for the future. Those are environmental stories. To me, perhaps the hardest innovation that we've got to do is understand the social dimension. How can we demonstrate that we're improving human life wherever we touch human life? As an employee, as a customer, somebody in the supply chain. It's not where we are now, but we will have to have ways of demonstrating social value through everything we do. So that's the 5 little areas that business can do. It knows how to plan, it knows how to integrate, it knows how to create partnerships, it knows how to work with the consumer, it knows how to innovate. All that's happening. It's a little bit fragmented at this moment in time, but I thought I'd just finish with a picture of my business. It's the planet. No business has defied the laws of thermodynamics to find raw materials and energy from the middle of nowhere. Everything we do comes from there. And I think a few, well, more than a few, and many business leaders are beginning to recognize now that this fundamentally underpins our business model. And whatever your morals are, and whatever your ethics are, without this, we have no business model. We have no business model just for the billion or so consumers of today, let alone the 3 or 4 billion of the future. So I started the conversation with 3 questions. Can business put off acting now? Absolutely not. Can business actually find the solutions it needs to get? Absolutely, they're out there. There's nothing difficult about driving the next 10, 20, 30, 40% of the sustainability journey. All the solutions are there. We talked about the government and consumer. Do we just wait for them to push us? Absolutely not, because they're in the rearview mirror. That's the 20th century push for change. The true journey that lies ahead for business, it's about its cost base. It's about the compact with society and how febrile that is. It's about competition in your marketplace that's going to leave you excluded, left out of radical change in what's happening out there. Those are the drivers that are forcing business to think about this, not government, not the consumer today. So, lots going on, lots of potential, but what's the one thing that's going to drive this to scale? Well, we've got to be a little bit tactical about that. There's lots of business leaders looking for leadership. They're all busy trying to make money in a recession. They're all sort of get this, but what brings them together into galvanizing change? Well, I've got my eye on 9 months out, a little something called, Rio that's emerging out there, Rio plus 20. It's a vacuum at the moment. There's so much that we could do with it. 100 business leaders stood at Rio, committing to stop deforestation, committing to drive social value, committing to solve the water issues. Between them, they will stand there and make that difference. They will report on it each year. They will show how in 10 years' time there can be a radically different business model, better for the planet, better for everybody. Business is part of the problem, but it's got a road map forward now. Thank you very much.